The Bob Stoops idea obviously is being tossed around everywhere. Knowing that Kirk is probably not here for more than 3 more years, I think if Iowa had the opportunity to nab Bob now, I think it's a fair question. How do we make that transition? But you really can't let go. I mean, obviously you're not going to let Kirk go for no reason, but Bob's a program changer. I mean, I think everybody would agree to that, whether you're an Oklahoma fan or not. So obviously that would be your number one attempt. But I don't know in 3 years, when assuming Kirk retires in 3 to 4 more years, I don't know that Bob's going to be on the market. I just don't. I just have a hard time believing that he would be. And I also don't know if he's not if he's on the market then, and he hasn't accepted a major job by 2024. Is Iowa that much of a dream job for Bob? I don't know that. Obviously, Mark is more of probably a reasonable question. Maybe Iowa has an opportunity to steal him. I mean, the Stoops family obviously is an Iowa family, and Bret Bielema. I mean, the same way. I mean, everybody knows about the tattoo, the Hawkeye tattoo that Bret has. It'll be interesting to see what he does in Illinois. I mean, obviously, if Bret has a lot of success at Illinois, I mean, Illinois is one of those programs that should be able to sustain success. I think it's probably one of the more underachieving programs in the country, just given the recruiting base that they have there. And I love Lovie Smith, but he was never really able to grab the in-state talent that he needed to make that program successful. So yeah, I think if you look at it from that perspective, Bob is obviously the number one choice, but he's probably the least likely. And then depending on what happens with Bret, yeah, I mean, if he succeeds there, maybe he's an option in 3 years. If he doesn't succeed there, no Iowa fan's going to want him back anyways. I just wonder if he would leave if he's successful in Illinois again with that recruiting base. I don't know why he'd want to leave that landscape.
Bob Stoops, at the time that he was at Oklahoma, even though he was in a high pressure job, major program, top of the line, did a great job, regardless of what some people may say about his shortcomings in national championship games. One of the marks of his tenure there, though, was that he led a very balanced life for a football coach. He wasn't one of these just maniacal guys that just was obsessed with the job, slept at the office. No, he very much put in play a balanced life and lifestyle with his family, and then communicated that to his coaching staff as much as possible at this level of football. And so the reason I bring that up is, on one hand, I would think, okay, as you just stated, is Iowa a big enough job for Bob Stoops? At the same time, maybe he's looking for somewhere that he can, and you would have a better gauge of Iowa football from that standpoint than me, because it's a big time program. It's Big Ten football, competing and wanting to win championships, millions of dollars on the line. So there is a level of high pressure, but I think at the likes of Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, they look at places like Iowa where you can just go, be comfortable, run your football program, go to a bowl game and be okay. And there's not much pressure. And I don't want to discount that or take that to one extreme or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. And I think, like it or not, the fact that Iowa over the past, 42 years has had 2 head coaches. That's great, but it's instilled that feeling around the program. And I think across the country, that kind of a reputation. I think Bob, though, I'm not sure that Bob is one of those guys that you talked about balance with his family. Is he going to come out of retirement 5 years into it to go coach at Iowa? Where, again, is he going to be able to have any more success at Iowa than he did at Oklahoma? I don't see how that's possible. But again, I just can't read which Stoops am I looking for? Bob Stoops' mind, because he does have close ties to Iowa. I mean, he's a Hayden Fry product. Who knows? I mean, I don't know that question's ever been asked of him. I would love to hear his response. Obviously, he's not going to say anything too pervasive with Kirk still at the helm, but I think he's got a lot of respect for Kirk. I think what has been done at Kentucky for Bob's brother. I mean, it's been impressive, although Kentucky's been kind of up and down these last couple of years. But certainly he was the guy that people were talking about 2-3 years ago, and now he's kind of taken a bit of a dip. So was there somebody else in there? Brian Ferentz. I think Rod mentioned Brian. Yeah, I mean, Brian, the thing about Brian is I don't think he's going to recover from the allegations this past offseason. I don't know how first of all, there's still an open lawsuit that the school is dealing with. And we mentioned earlier that Urban Meyer and the Jags GM is now involved with that because of their attempt to fraudulent, as people would put it, attempt to hire Chris Doyle. And so there's a lot that can play out there. I just don't know from a perception standpoint. Brian hasn't done enough to overcome the perception. That's the problem. I mean, I think people understood 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that Brian's probably the next guy in line. And I don't think a lot of people loved that idea, but we kind of just accepted that that's probably what's going to happen here in Iowa. But now with what happened, Brian's got a reputation of this. Obviously, 2017, he had an issue in the press box with an umpire. He's had issues publicly with some of the things he's said. He's gotten himself kind of in trouble in the past. And now, of course, with the allegations this offseason or this past offseason, I just wonder if there's too much mud that's been thrown on him to really overcome, whether it's right or overcome it with sort of a mediocre resume. I mean, Iowa's offense has not really, in my estimation, it's taken a step forward from the Greg Davis era, but I haven't seen much of any difference between the Ken O'Keefe era and the Brian Ferentz era. So I don't know about that one. I just don't think. I think Kirk would love that to happen. I think, obviously, I mean, he's his dad. I mean, I think that's pretty clear that blood's thicker than water, but I just don't know that you're going to be able to overcome that perception.
And that's one of the things I wonder about Bielema, getting back to Bret's situation and his background, his past in connection, obviously, to Iowa, that I would think in his heart of hearts, that unless he had some horrible experience at Iowa, which I don't believe is the case, I believe that he had a great experience based on every discussion I've ever heard him talk about his alma mater, that in his heart of hearts, he would choose Iowa over Illinois. But
I don't know.
Necessarily.
I don't know about that because, again, I think and maybe I'm giving the Illinois recruiting landscape way too much credit, but I just think there's been so much underachievement there that it's possible that he hit a gold mine with that job because, I mean, he failed at Arkansas. I think most people would agree with that. And so to get that job, and I think it's because, again, there's been a lot of failure at Illinois. So he was able to kind of nab a job that I just think has got a possibility. If Illinois if he can elevate that program within 2 to 3 years, that again, I just think Illinois, I'm not saying they're going to be a national power, but I definitely think they could be a power in the West. And so 3 years down the road, if he's on the uptick with them and Kirk Ferentz is kind of winding down at Iowa, I don't know about that jump.
So where I was going with that line of thinking is that it's just logical to think that anybody's connected to their alma mater to a certain degree. Okay. Past that, like you, I see the Illinois job as not necessarily a sleeping giant, but to be better than what it appears in the win-loss column over the last decade or more, where if you ask most college football fans, what's the better job, Iowa or Illinois, they're going to look at the results on the field, and almost everyone's going to say that Iowa's a better job just because the results produced have not even been close. But when you look at, as long as that head coach can go to Illinois and say, okay, I'm getting the investment from the administration, the resources, the facilities I need to compete, the recruiting footprint is substantially or decidedly better. I don't know if it's significantly better. Decidedly. I don't think there's a question there. So if Bret Bielema fails at Illinois, he's obviously not going to be a candidate for the Iowa job. If he does too well at Illinois and figures, hey, I'm knocking out 9 or 10 wins a year at Illinois and competing for the Big Ten Western Division, I'm in a good place. I would think that he needs to win at a decent rate and elevate the program to maybe bowl status to then be a candidate for the Iowa job and think, okay, maybe I can take the next step and go to Iowa and I can win more there.
Yeah, I think if Brett's winning 7 to 8 games on a regular basis at Illinois, I still wonder, as probably a demented as this sounds, because Iowa is a 7 to 8 win program virtually every year, maybe 9 or 10 on certain years. But I still wonder if that's enough from an Iowa fan's perspective to allow Bret to make that jump here, because we're talking about perception and we're talking about Brian Ferentz with perception. You just mentioned the perception around the Midwest as far as college football is concerned in the Big Ten is that Iowa's a better job than Illinois. I mean, you and I, being people that are looking at it a little bit closer, we both agree that potentially that could be flipped in the coming years. But I think that perception is still there. So I don't know that Iowa fans are going to be jumping all over the idea of a Bret Bielema who's come off, a season or two at 7-5 and that failed at Arkansas and that sort of hurt a lot of Iowa fans' feelings already at Wisconsin. I just don't know that Iowa fans are going to be jumping all over that. But yeah, there are definitely options. And I think one thing that Iowa fans are, some Iowa fans are a little bit tired of is assuming that Iowa has to stick to the Hayden Fry, Kirk Ferentz mold. I mean, the thing about it is if you look at what Hayden Fry brought to Iowa, he brought total. I mean, when he took over the program, he really did change things in Iowa City, and that stuck for 40 years with Kirk. But I think fans need to not be afraid of moving on from that era. And moving on from that era does not mean Kirk Ferentz retiring and hiring Bret Bielema, or Kirk Ferentz retiring and throwing, pearls at, I don't want to say pearls of swine, but I'm not comparing the Stoops to swine, but trying to nab Mark. Now, again, Bob, I don't think you could turn Bob. If Bob wants this job, you're throwing everything you have at Bob. But I don't know. I think that there's as much of the division there is in this world right now, Mark, from a political standpoint and all these things that we're dealing with as a human race and in this country. I think there's division within this fan base in Iowa. And there has been, and the allegations last year only made it worse. So I think there's fans that just want to move on from the Kirk Ferentz era, want to move on from the Hayden Fry era, even though I think Hayden was an upstanding guy as well, and want to move on with a whole new style and approach. And then there's the fans that are Kirk loyalists and Hayden loyalists. And so, yeah, I'm sure they'd love to see Mark, Bob, or Bret in here.
Bielema had a strange tenure at Arkansas. He had just won a Big Ten championship. He was on the podium hoisting the trophy, and within hours was hoisted away to Arkansas after winning the Big Ten championship in Indianapolis and being given, if memory serves me correctly, like $1.3 million more per year to go to Arkansas. So you make that business decision, you leave for the SEC Western Division. Well, he finds himself in a state that's devoid of high school football talent in a division that's the best in college football, and he's up against it. He tries to play smash mouth, hammer it down your throat football. It worked to a certain extent. They produced offensive linemen for the NFL and mostly running backs like Alex Collins and the like, Jonathan Williams. And he took over a bad program, elevated it year to year. They were winning 1 and 2 more games per year. He gets to an 8-5 level, wins 3 consecutive bowl games. And then they had this odd season where they got off to a great start. They were 7-2. They then just fell off the rails at the end of the year, they blew the final game of the season in Missouri up 24-0. They lose that game. They go to the Belka Bowl and they play Virginia Tech. They do the exact same thing. They go up 24-0. They blow the game. So they finish 7-6 after getting off to that great start. Then he has the one lousy season and he's gone. And so within that, this is how things change so quickly in college football. Like he's riding high at 7-2 and that program's going up the ladder. And within 10 months, 12 months, he's gone after like 10 or 12 bad games. And that's what happened to him in Arkansas.
So I just want to cut in real quick here, Mark. You sound like a closet Arkansas fan. You're wearing the dark, you're wearing the crimson, the Razorback colors, and I don't know how you recited. Did you look? I really hope for my prideful
Corey,
self you had to research these things.
Corey, come on. The people have called me the voice of college football for a reason.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you,
numbers and game situations stick to my brain. They just do.
The way you explain that, I think there's, again, back to perception. There's a perception that he really did fail. I said it myself, but the way you explain that, he was that is the toughest division in college football. It's been the toughest division in college football for how many years now, and will be probably until Nick Saban retires. And so, I think he's gotten a bit of a bad rap, but he's also not, let's be honest, Bret's not been the most loyal guy in the world. I'm not saying that he did Iowa wrong by taking the head coaching job at Wisconsin, but of course Iowa fans didn't like it. And then of course, like you said, he jumped ship as soon as he had a high offer as far as more money to Arkansas. So I'm happy for Bret in that he's able to be back at this level and have a chance to compete in the Big Ten. It's not at Illinois, even though they're a border school, there's no rivalry between Iowa and Illinois. I could see him. I could see him bringing that program to 7-5, 8-4 level again. And if he does that, like you said, maybe you get him. Maybe he's in the conversation when Kirk sees the door, finds the door, but. There's that slot, that gap, I think, that he's going to have to stay at.
I can't wait to get to the next question based on some previous conversations I've had with Corey. But before we do, I want to clean up a few things real quick. I love this comment coming in from Mike3883. Go follow this guy, everyone. He's been so patient.
Okay. Are they talking about you or are they talking about me, Mark?
They're talking about you. I think Mike's been following me for a long, long time. They're talking about you. My response to that would be very kind of everyone, but that's not the reason to go follow Corey and follow his podcast right here on YouTube and his audio podcast. Is because he's exceptional at what he does, and you can hear it right here in his analysis of Iowa football. So that's no reason to follow someone. I appreciate the sentiment there, Mike, but I think we all need to follow Corey because he knows his stuff.